Hi guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Matt Garvey and we are here to talk about making comics today. And in today's video, we are going to be continuing our discussion about project managing your comic from start to finish. Because as I said in the last couple of videos, you're not working with an editor. It is your job to be the project manager of your comic, managing that comic from start to finish. Now, I'm not saying you need to know how to draw, how to color, or even how to letter your comic. But having a basic knowledge of these areas is going to make you a better creator and be able to spot any potential mistakes as they appear during the comic making journey, rather than, mistakes happening, you not noticing them, and then the comic, goes to print, and then suddenly you see this glaring mistake, and it's just gonna ruin your day from start to finish when you see it. So, as I've said, on the art side, you need to make sure that the story is clearly there from panel to panel to page, even without the letters and colours, and also making sure that the anatomy and the perspective is spot on. But when we talk about colours and letters, this is an entire different story. Now, if you've been watching the channel from the start, you remembered I recommended these two books to yourself, and there is a special reason why I recommended these two books in particular. Both of these books will give you some foundation knowledge around colouring and lettering, and will hopefully, along with these videos, help spot any potential mistakes. Because let's be honest, when you're making your first comics, you're most likely not going to be paying people who have worked for Marvel and DC to, draw, colour and letter your comic. It's more than likely you're going to be starting out, as we all do, and working with creators on an equal level, and you're all learning together at the same time. And there is no shame in making mistakes. We all have to start somewhere, and it's all part of that learning curve and that comic making journey. But just like writing, colorists and letterers new in their comic journey are going to make mistakes too. And if you can catch them so they can be changed early in production, it's going to save you time and, more importantly, money. And I can promise you that I am not poo-pooing on any new colorists or new letterers out there, because as well as being a comic book writer, I do letter my own comics, and over the last couple of years I have been teaching myself how to color comics too. So these mistakes that I'm going to mention today are mistakes that I've made as well. So these are mistakes that everyone makes when they start out. So just for the record, I'm not having a go at anyone, so just bear that in mind before everyone starts coming after me and going, "You bully colorists." I don't, I promise you. These are just mistakes that I've made as well. Now, when it comes to colouring, especially for new colorists like myself, the biggest mistake I see is having lack of knowledge around value and contrast. So before we talk about value and contrast, I need to explain how colour works on a very, very basic form. So on the screen at the moment, you can see an enlarged version of my colour picker, which is normally in the top right hand corner of my Photoshop window. Now, normally, before I started colouring, I used to think of colours as just light and dark. And there are actually two ways we need to think about colours. We need to think about colours from light and dark, which is the top of the square down to the bottom of the square. But we also need to think about saturation of colours as well. So what do I mean by this is, if you look at the left hand side of the square, you've got your greys and your whites there. And if you move to the right of the square, it moves to the very deep blue colours. So you've got light and dark and desaturated and saturated colors. So this is something we need to understand before we can talk about value and talk about contrast. So let's talk about value first. On the screen, you'll see a page from DC's New Frontiers. And if you've never read New Frontiers, totally check it out. It is drawn by the late great Darwin Cook, who was tragically taken from us way too soon. And the guy was just a master storyteller. And the colors for this are done by the equally legendary Dave Stewart. Now, this is a night scene between Batman and the Martian Manhunter in his human form. And it's dark, it's night. The only real light is coming from the window, from the outside, from the buildings across the way. So when a new colorist tackles a page like this, they will instantly think, they need to start using very, very dark colors to, to color it. And they will start color picking, colors that are below this red line. And, they'll pick, from those darkest parts here. And then they'll just go to town. But this is a mistake. Now, this bit is going to sound absolutely bonkers. So please try and stay with me, because it took me a while to get my head around this concept as well. Now, colours only look light and dark because of the colours that are around them. Okay, so if we jump back to the New Frontiers page, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using my eyedropper tool here, and what I want you to do is pay special attention to the colour picker square up in the corner, because I'm going to start selecting colours from this page, and I'm going to show you how dark they actually are. And I'm doing this in Photoshop, and guys, if you've got a copy of Photoshop or Clip Studio or Procreate, this will work equally as good. If you don't have copies of these, it may be worth, buying a license for Procreate or Clip Studio, or a subscription to Photoshop, because when you start to, project managing your comics, tools like this to help you try and spot mistakes are invaluable. So it may be worth, putting some cash behind it and, investing in some of these programs. But as I said, I'm going to start color picking around this page, and I'm going to show you how dark these actual images are. Because remember, this is a night scene. So let's start with Batman's cowl. And as you can see, the dot is dead center in that color picker. It is neither dark or neither light. It is neither saturated or desaturated. It is bang in the middle of that color. So it's not actually that dark in the in the grand scheme of things. It's that color is not below that line that I drew, where new colorists tend to pick very, very dark colors. That color is bang on dead center in the color picker. So next, let's pick Batman's face that's in shadow. Again, it's actually even lighter, but it looks darker because the color next to it is very bright. The background is even lighter. Having this light background means that Batman looks darker than he actually is. So if you are a new colorist or project manager in your comic, you need to make sure that the colors that are being used in your comic don't fall within this lower third of the color picker, because if you start using colors from these colors are going to print very, very badly. Okay, so that's value. What about contrast? Well, when we talk about contrast, we need to remember that, when we look at a comic page, whether it be in a floppy comic or in a graphic novel or on a tablet, we're actually still looking at a 2D image. And this is one of the reasons why comic colorists are so amazing. These guys are unsung heroes, because not only is it their job to, lead the reader's eye around the page so we focus on the important elements of there, but within a 2D image, they have to create different planes so that our eyes can see a foreground, a midground, and a background. And one of the ways they do this is by contrast. So going back to this Batman page, we can see using my eye picker that both Batman's cowl is a nice blue, and also the background colors are different variations of blue as well. But if I throw a black layer over this, you'll see that Batman's cowl is actually a lot darker than the background. So what this does is this creates for our eyes a different plane of view. It pushes the background to the back and pushes Batman forward, even though fundamentally they are the same color, and the artist does this by different levels of value. And one of the big mistakes I see from new colorists is, they will pick colors that are very similar in value, even if they are very different in hue. So for example, if we look at the green and blue colors on this image, yes, they do look very, very different, on face value. But if I was to throw another black layer on them, we'll see that they are very similar in value. If I use my color picker, if you watch the color picker on the right as I click each of these bands, that dot is not moving. So unfortunately, if a character is painted, in the blue and the background is in the green, our eyes are not going to be able to tell that there is a midground and a background or a foreground. So a comic colorist needs to use darker values or lighter values to differentiate between the foreground and the background, like this. Now, if I remove this black layer, those new colors that I've laid on top of those light colors look really dark in comparison. But if I start picking them with my color picker, you'll see that they are all the same saturation, just different colors, and they are not actually that dark at all. It's how they react with the colors behind them and in front that makes colors light and dark. So another way that a comic colorist creates contrast on the comic book page, try saying that 5 times, is by using cool and warm colors. So from another example from DC's New Frontiers, we'll see Batman here fighting off a horde of guys, wearing some purple robes. If I start using my eye picker on these guys, you'll see that, on the color picker, they're in the warm range. We've got some oranges here, we've got some nice purples. But then if I click over onto Batman, we'll see that he's blue and some nice cool colors, which separates him from them. And even if I use, another black layer on this image, we'll see that he is lighter than the guys that he's fighting. So not only are they using warm and cool colors to differentiate them, but they're also using light and dark as well, which helps us separate him from his background and from the other elements on the screen, and gets us to focus our eyes on Batman and the most important things on the page. So what I want you to take away from this video, guys, is no one's expecting you to know all the ins and outs of comic book coloring. And as I said at the beginning of this video, we are literally just scratching the surface. But what I want you to do is, when you start to get those comic book pages back from your colorist, just throw them into a Procreate or throw them into a Clip Studio or a Photoshop, and just get the eyedropper tool out and just make sure that the colors that they're choosing are not too dark and don't fall in that lower third of the color picker. And then just, throw a black layer on the pages and just make sure there's enough contrast between, the light and the dark. So, foregrounds and backgrounds are created, because at the end of the day, this is going to make your comics look a lot better, and it's going to help you spot these simple mistakes that can easily be caught. And just before you go, guys, I'm just going to show you how to create those black and white layers so you can check the values of your comic pages as they come in. And this is going to work in Photoshop or Clip Studio or Procreate or whatever, whatever piece of software that you've got. Now, I've got my page open here. As you can see, in the bottom right hand corner, you can see this tiny little square with a folded corner. Now that's the new layer button. So if we click that, and then we will see this new layer has turned up above the background, and at the moment it's got a checkerboard pattern, which means that layer is actually transparent because there's nothing in it. So then what we need to do is pick our black color, which is there, and then we need to pick our paint bucket tool, and then what we need to do is fill that layer with black. Don't worry, you can no longer see the image below it, but I can assure you that it's still there. So all we need to do now is change the mode of this layer, because it's currently on normal, which you can see just here. So if we click on this drop down menu, and if we pick color, which is one from bottom, now if we change that to color, what that does is it places those black colors on all the colors that are below it. So you can see the values of those pages, and you can make sure that your pages are right before they get sent to print. So hopefully you've enjoyed that, guys. Thanks for watching. Before you go, don't forget to give us a like, share and subscribe. I will see you in the next video, where we're going to be talking about some basic lettering mistakes that I see from new creators. And as always, if I can make comics, anyone can. And I'll see you next time. Take care.